Hey guys, it's your host, Bailey Cartwright. Welcome to the Stronger Scars podcast, where I invite others to dive deep into the ups and downs of physical and mental scars. Hi guys, welcome back. Today I'm joined with someone who's on the podcast before, and I loved her so much that she's back on. So today I'm with Hannah Bilton, and she is a senior now at Hobart and William Smith Colleges, and she is actually a coxswain on the rowing team on the men's team. Last time she was on the podcast, if I remember, you were kind of trying to figure out what to do next, and I'm really happy for you. So if you want to go ahead and just introduce yourself a little bit, if I missed anything that is important.
So my name is Hannah Bilton. Last time I was on the podcast, I was here with one of my triplet sisters, Emma, who used to row with me. She's still on the women's team. She had compartment syndrome in her legs. I'm dealing with TOS compartment syndrome type things up in my upper body, my arms, and all of that. And last time we talked, I was figuring out, or I had just changed teams. I was a rower on the William Smith team, which is our women's college, for 3 years, and then I just switched over to be a coxswain on the men's team, and I've been doing that since then.
Awesome. So I was talking to Hannah a little bit before we hit record, and I first just want to highlight what's been happening in the soccer world lately, which was the death of Katie Meyer. She ended up committing suicide last week, and I first and foremost want to just give my prayers and condolences to her friends and family. I truly can't imagine what that's like and what going through that's like for her loved ones. And I just want to open up the conversation with Hannah a little bit because I know she's struggled with her mental health as well. But like this world of college athletics and athletes just, we don't obviously know what was going on in Katie's life. We're not Katie. We're not her close people. But, there obviously was something going on. And I just feel like there has to be more done to prevent it, to be outlets for these people who are going through things, who are, Stanford, obviously a big school. She's won a national championship with them. She's been on the US women's youth teams. Like, she obviously had a lot of pressure on her, and like I just, more has to be done for these athletes.
Yeah, definitely. I think that us individually as teammates really need to make sure that we're kind of finding like that empathy and that drive within ourselves to open up conversations with teammates, because you never really know who's struggling. Like, you can always pick out some people if you see like, oh, maybe they're having a bad day or something, but just making sure that like us as friends and support systems can help just like open conversations with our friends. Like, obviously our job isn't to be like therapists or anything like that, but just helping them to like either get out their day's frustrations, helping them guide them towards different resources, or telling like coaches like, hey, like I think so and so struggling with something, and just trying to find like a pipeline to resources to help them too.
I think too, you brought up coaches, and I was reading a Twitter thread about Katie, and so many, older people were saying, I have a daughter who is an NCAA soccer player. This is so terrifying for me to read. And there were so many of those comments, and it made me think, like, honestly, when a parent sends their kid, who then turns into an adult when you hit 18, they sign all of their own medical documents. Everything is them. They're an adult now. So you're trusting that, one, they are in good hands, and two, like, the school is taking care of them, the coaches are taking care of them, their teammates are taking care of them. You have to trust that they're in good hands. And that's a really terrifying feeling, because as track record shows, resources aren't always the best. The coaches sometimes don't always care about the person, they care about the athlete. Teammates, it's hit or miss. And I just think it's really terrifying for a parent. Like, I'm thinking about, like, one day when I have kids, and am I going to be okay with sending them away? And a lot of times, like, big athletes, they're going across the country to big schools, and I just think it's a really scary thing to think about. And we have to put time, energy, and money into resources for these student athletes to really help them.
I definitely agree. And I think like going off the coaches thing, like having training for coaches on how to deal with like students and mental health, and like the weight of being a student athlete. And obviously this generation compared to maybe when they were student athletes, if they were, like is very different with social media and phones and like the kind of like branding that they make you do as like a student athlete on campus of how you have to present yourself and everything. So I think a lot of training should really be kind of geared toward coaches on how to like maybe help us deal better with what we're going through.
Right. So, yeah, like I said, before we get into talking about Hannah, I just wanted to, let you guys know that you truly are never alone. Suicide is such an awful thing that I feel like our generation has really been hindrance with. And, there are people out there who will help you, who will love you. I want to throw out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. Just if someone needs to hear it, it's 800-273-8255. And yeah, seriously, you guys, like, you're never alone. If you know someone who's struggling, take the 10 minutes out of your day to go talk to them, let them know that you're here for them. And I just think that being a good human, being kind to people, it's never going to expire. It's always going to be something that's relevant. So, with that, can you first, I feel like a lot of the listeners will know what compartment syndrome is just because of me. And I know I had you guys on, I've had a few people with it on. Explain to us what TOS is.
So TOS is thoracic outlet syndrome. Basically, the upper part of your chest, kind of between like your sternum and your like shoulder here is considered your thoracic outlet, and the muscle that goes over it, um, for me is too large. It got either like inflamed, it got too big too quickly, that whole type of thing, and it causes everything up from like chest up in me to be very, very tight all the time. And when I exercise, do daily tasks and stuff like that, my thoracic outlet gets so tight that it presses on my nerve bundles, and all of like my arteries and stuff like that, and causes my arms to twitch. I lose motor function or slowed motor function. They go purple, circulation problems. So a whole bunch of different things. So that's what I have. I have it on both sides, but it's really worse on my left side.
Interesting. And I one of the things that I love that Hannah is doing is she has an Instagram. How do you say it?
Teo
Toast
Scoodles. So
Scoodles.
Scoodles is like a nickname I've had since I was little, and my actual Instagram is Scoodles99, and a lot of my teammates latched on to calling me Scoodles. And as a joke, because a lot of my teammates over like summer and winter breaks made like workout pages where they posted like them doing workouts or what they were up to. I made Teo Scoodles because I thought it was funny with one of my teammates because I can't work out. I've been on no working out for like a year now. So I was like, this is funny. And then it kind of turned into like, oh wait, like my teammates didn't like fully understand what was going on. And I know there was a lot of lack of communication between coaching staffs, training staffs, and all of that. So I figured at this point, kind of inspired by what you did with Stronger Scars, to kind of like use it as a way to inform my teammates, my friends, my family, and like my coaches and like care team about what was going on with me and my day and my recovery. But also just have a little bit of fun with it, like the guys were doing.
Right. Yeah, I think, obviously I've been following it and I love how, it's also like obviously it's helpful for other people to know what's going on and to, try to understand what you're going through. But, personally, like for yourself, it's a nice journal that you get to keep, you get to remember everything because when I was a couple episodes ago, I did like a review of like my injury and my surgeries and everything. And I was like struggling to find information because a lot of times we don't want to document it because it's embarrassing or it's a hard time in our lives. But I feel like for you to just kind of have like, you write stories here. And I think it's so important for yourself to just have to look back one day and realize what you've really been through.
That's what like really helped me like now going through everything, because last year when I first started going through this and like I literally knew nothing about what was going on with my body, I would just sit and like cry by myself. Like I kept it very much to myself. And I going back to the doctors when I had to go for all these new visits, because my sports trainers were like, I think it's time for a second opinion. And I just told them what was going on. I had no memory of exactly what was happening or like how often things happened back then. I just remember like the sadness, like being in pain and all of that. So I thought going forward too, especially since like I'm starting this whole journey of recovery once again, it would also be a good place to have like records of stuff to tell my doctors.
Right. And, when I was talking to Hannah about coming on again, the one thing I really wanted to highlight that I think she has experience and also just can put into words very eloquently for you guys is like, what happens when you don't get answers? It is your everyday life that is affected, and people aren't giving you answers, whether they don't know the answer, whether they don't have the nicest way of putting the answer. And that's kind of what I want to talk about for the majority of today, is just like, how do you deal with that? Talk to us a little bit about, you know, what you're trying to, like, you're obviously trying to get better, but like, how are you trying to get to those answers, and what does it look like when you don't get them, and how do you handle them? Like, what are some examples that you can lead by example for other people who may be struggling with the same thing?
Yeah, so originally I actually wasn't looking for answers. I kind of had accepted, this is what I talked about last time when we spoke. I kind of accepted that this was my body and was how it's going to be, because up to that point, like, doctors had told me, like, just get through the season, like, get through the year, whatever, and maybe it'll get better. And my sports trainer sat me down one day and she's like, Hannah, do you honestly think that you can, like, because she just had a baby, and she's like, do you honestly think that you could hold a baby right now? And
Right.
I was like, yeah, I could hold a baby. She's like, for more than 5 minutes. And I was like, oh, no. And she goes, do you want kids? And I was like, I mean, I guess, like, yeah, in the future I want them. She goes, well, what happens after college when you can't go to the physical therapist every other day and you can't come to me in between a chiropractor, and like you're doing more than just like being here?
Yeah.
And that's what kind of turned it. From there, she sent me to doctors up by school, and they had no clue what was wrong with me. TOS and compartment syndrome were something that were always thrown around just because my sister had it. There were a bunch of people on the team that had it before on the women's team. So everyone kind of was like, you know what, you probably had it too. And when I got to Ithaca, it was like I brought my roommate with me, and literally, like, it was like it was a science experiment. Like, they had sports trainers come in, they had nurses come in, they had physical therapists come in, the doctor came in, and even with the mask on, you could see them, like, first they were like a little excited because this isn't something you see every day, and like you can tell, like, their faces low key lit up, and they're like, oh my god. But then they started like lifting my arms and like poking me, and they're like, oh my god. And they got a little scared because they had no clue what was going on, and that kind of opened the rabbit hole of everything. At first, I'm not gonna lie, like, it's really upsetting. Like, when you see doctors come in and, like, look low-key excited to kind of, like, play with your body in that sense, like, that's kind of terrifying because you know what you're going through, and you go to the doctors thinking you're gonna get, like, you talked about this on a podcast I listened to the other day, like, you think you're gonna go and get fixed, like when you go and break a bone, like, they just cast it up, and then you go there and they've never seen this before. They only see this once or twice in a lifetime, and they're like scared to touch you but excited to touch you just to get like figure out what's wrong with you. And at first I was really struggling with that. I left the doctors, I cried in the car with my roommate, I cried to my mom. But at the end of the day, like, once you start that journey, like, for me at least, like, I want to see it through. Like, it gave me a little bit of hope that I didn't necessarily have anymore, and that's what, especially now, I've been trying to latch on to. Like, there are people that are looking to help me get better, and I could possibly get better, which was something that I wasn't expecting back in, I guess, like June when we last spoke. So
I know I've said this before in some of my podcasts, but like, one of the moments that sticks out for me, I don't remember which time around I was getting tested for compartment syndrome, and it affected my parents. They didn't want me to go through that. I know the test, like, it's awful. They didn't want me to have to go through it. And I remember my dad sitting down in the car with me, and he's like, I was like, Dad, like, it's fine. Like, I'm fine. He's like, it's not fine. Like, you're a guinea pig. Like, they just keep testing because they don't know what's going on and they don't know how to help you. So instead of telling you that, they just keep acting like you're an experiment. And I know that's something that you, I'm sure, feel the same way about. And I don't know how to fix that. I don't, but like, there has to be a better way to approach, especially these young athletes who have been doing their sport forever. They love what they're doing, and they're in pain. They're in pain. There has to be a better way to approach that and to communicate that, like, we truly don't know what's going on with you. So we're not going to just act like we do and act like you're a guinea pig in some experiment.
Yeah, definitely. Like that was so hard coming, like going there and then trying to get all the follow-ups to do like whatever testing they wanted. I ended up just going home, and over winter break, I think I had like 10 or like between 10 and 20 doctor's appointments of just like testing. And the biggest thing for me, like I realized was kind of what you were saying, like we as like the people going through it, like, oh no, it's fine, like to everyone around us, even though like it's not really fine. And it took me like I had to get an MRI where they had to weight my arms down above my head, which I can't put my arms above my head for more than a couple seconds without them losing circulation. And I was in the machine, like IV, fully strapped down to a table with my arms like sandbagged but above my head for about 45 minutes. And I think that was the first time where I turned to my dad afterwards and it was like, I'm not okay. Like I cried after that. Like he was like, we can go out to dinner because like, you're in New York City, like there's all this fun stuff to do. And I was like, no, like I just want to go home. I went home, like my mom and I cried together. Like it's okay to, after experiences like that, I think we need to realize like to admit that we're not okay and just kind of like sit with that for a little bit, because so many things I think are thrown at us as like first our generation, but as like students, as athletes, it's just like we need to move forward and like keep going. And I think it's sometimes beneficial just to kind of sit with like, this is what I'm going through, this is what I'm dealing with, and it's hard. Like it's okay to say that it's hard.
Yeah, I one of those things that I always like, I think I was just talking about this in my last episode that's not released yet when we're recording, but I struggle with the difference between sometimes I am, the number one advocate of sucking it up and getting something done. Like it's hard and you just have to grind it out and get it done.
Mhm.
But then there's other days where I'm like, no, like it's so okay to, let yourself sulk, let yourself realize how shitty your situation is and just be upset. And I think that there's a time and place for both. But, like you said, with our generation, I think a lot of it is suck it up. I think right now things are starting to move forward in the mental health world. And I think the next generation will be in a very good place for that. But I think we're still on that tail end of, suck it up, rub some dirt on it, you're fine.
Yeah.
Um, I think that too, like people who I think there's a difference between someone who went through an injury and got fixed one time, one and done, you're good. And then people like you, myself, who it is an ongoing multiple year experience. And I remember, like you said, you had that moment in your MRI. Like there were moments where I was sitting, in a waiting room and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, why am I putting myself through this? This is so hard. And I'm like, I'm falling into pieces and it's really tough.
I honestly think that like going and not getting answers or trying to get answers is a lot harder than sucking it up and continuing to be in pain, because it opens up the whole thing of like, well, they don't know what's going on with me, like, oh, this and that, and like so many different doors that I think like, oh, well, if I would have just sucked it up, like maybe I'd be rowing still, or like maybe I wouldn't have to sit out for the rest of the season, or like this and that. Like it's the harder option, but I know like in the long run, like I can't write in all of my classes. I have to pick what class I can sit and take notes in. I can't sleep on a pillow properly or hold my arms above my head. Like that's not a way to live,
Right.
but it's just so much easier to be like, well, this is it and just keep going.
Right. I totally agree. I hope you give yourself enough credit because I know how bad it can suck when you're just sitting in a doctor's office. And, there are doctors out there who I do think are good people and genuinely care about all their patients. I dealt with two of those wonderful people. But there's some doctors out there where you're a number and you're a patient who's in and out of the door in 10 minutes. And you need to give yourself enough credit because just by hearing you talk about how many doctors you've seen and all the places you went, like I know that can't be easy. I hope people who are listening can acknowledge that that's not easy as well.
Yeah, I think like something that's really like truly helped me was like finding those doctors that really do care, because I I drove all the way home for my treatment, and from school to home it's about 6 hours and then another hour to where I get treatment. And it was just the level of care that I was getting there. Like my doctors knew me, they remembered like what majors and minors I have here at school, or like that I'm a rower, like just little things like that that like show like they're not just looking at my chart, like they remember who I am as a person. And for me, like having a care team like that makes it a lot easier. Like when he's sticking a needle in my shoulder and saying like, "Oh, are you okay?" Like, but we're talking about my abroad experience that he also shared like a similar background. So like stuff like that makes it so much easier than when I went to doctors closer to here that I had no clue who they were. They didn't know who I was and kind of like either told me I didn't have what I had and didn't know about what I had. It's just so much easier to like feel more comfortable in yourself, your injury, your diagnosis, or your lack of diagnosis if you have people that truly care about
Yeah,
you.
100%. I think too, like looking back at my experience, the one that my surgeon, like, he would be honest with me. He's like, I think you should get the surgery. I think you should be done with the surgeries. Like, and sometimes when you're blinded by opinions of, people in your personal life who don't want you to go through the pain, they don't want you to go through the surgery. When you have someone who is an outsider perspective, but can still care and be compassionate about what you're going through, to just be honest with you and give you their, medical opinion, I think that is super important too.
Yeah, definitely. Especially because, like, I'm starting now to look back into like surgeries and stuff like that. And my parents are really hesitant about all of that because they're like, the surgery for TOS is to remove your first rib up top. And so they're like, do you want to go through that? It's a couple nights in the hospital and then a couple weeks recovery. And they're like, are you sure you want to put your body through that? Like, you're literally removing a part of yourself. But then, like, my doctors are like, if this test comes back, like, at the end of the year, like, you are a good, like, candidate for it. And it fixes this problem about 80% of people. And so, like, them being honest, like, no, like, you're a good candidate and, like, this could help you so much more versus like my parents like, Hannah, like, are you sure this is like what you want to do? Especially because I just got Botox, in or something similar to Botox, but same effect, injected in my neck and my shoulder on my left side. And originally my mom was like, are you sure like you want to do that? Like all of this, just kind of like looking at like anything that could possibly go wrong or like why would you want to go get 100 needles like stuck and all of that. And I was like, no, like this is what I want. Like my doctors at home were like, no, it's time. Like we've tried every painkiller out there. Like it's just not working. And this is like the best case for you. And that's what really like drove me home to like go to New York City and go get these shots and come back up. Because at the end of the day, like you know your body. And yes, like your parents, your friends are like looking out for you, but you need to do what's best for like you going forward. And if that means like for me, like putting myself through like a surgery, yes, it's painful, but I've also been dealing with chronic pain for over a year now. So it's not as painful, I think, as either continuing or what I've already dealt with.
I want to talk for a minute about you doing all this traveling to go see doctors and things. Like, one, I know it's not cheap. Two, time commitment. And three, like I know you said like you either go with your mom or dad. So like what has that been like for all of you?
It's been a lot. The first couple of times I started going to doctors up at school, I would have my friends take me because I don't have a car. But any place to go see like not to be like rude to the area or whatever, but to go get like decent medical care, you have to drive an hour from school. We're in a very small, secluded area of upstate New York. So it's a big feat. You do have to kind of take the whole day. Um, when I started needing more serious care than what they could provide up here or what they were willing to provide up here, I had to talk with my mom, and my parents were at the place where they already went through this with Emma and her legs, and they were like, no, like we'll come and get you, whatever. It's definitely not cheap. I'm really lucky that, I mean, I guess lucky on one hand, since my injury did happen here at school, the school pays for a lot of like my physical therapy, my care, whatever my insurance doesn't cover. Um, but I think my parents have just been incredible with like whatever it takes, we're gonna come get you, bring you home. Like they take days off of work to come drive up and drive me back down that same day, or they'll stay in the hotel. Like they try to make it as fun of an experience as they can and not really put the pressure of like this sucks, like it's like $300 to come pick you up, stay in a hotel, like whatever. Instead they're like, yeah, like we'll come up, we'll bring your I'm a triplet, they bring the third triplet up to school with us, they'll bring the dogs, they'll take like me and my friends out to dinner. And they just like at that point, if they're already spending it, they're like, we might as well just go do something fun and make it a little less like charged with, oh, like this is for doctor's appointments and stuff like that.
My injury and being away from my parents and really needing to lean on them for things like that, I got so much closer to them. I mean, I was always pretty close to them, but having them be able to watch me be open and vulnerable about what I was going through, I think really connected us on a whole different level.
Definitely. Like I'm spending like at school the first 2 years, like I think I saw my parents literally when we had like Thanksgiving break, winter break, and summer. That was it. And now like my parents have come up like 6 or 7 times already. And like we've only this is our seventh week of school. Like they've come up and I've seen them so much. And like, yes, like it sucks that I have to go to the doctors and that I am in pain, but I'm spending so much more time with them that I just like at the end of the day, you can't get that back. And it's nice as like a college student, especially I'm looking to go to law school, and the one that I really like is super far from home. So just kind of cherishing the time that I can be like seeing my parents in between like school and all of that, or like seeing my sister or my dogs at home is like the really nice part of all of it.
Yeah. So I want your insight on, for someone listening to this who has a daunting doctor's appointment coming up, how would you recommend them to prepare for that? And how would you have them like approach the situation?
Um, Honestly, I think the best thing to do is like talk to like your friends, or like for me, I tell my couple of friends and my physical therapist Julie. I literally will text her and my trainer Steph, like I'm going to the doctor today, like I'm not gonna lie, I'm nervous, and like we'll talk out like everything that we think is gonna happen, or just like feelings, or they'll try to cheer me up or something, because before I used to go into a lot of it just feeling it by myself. And when you do that, like my coach now calls like that little voice in your head the governor, and like they don't want you to kind of break through, and they'll kind of like if you're doing like a 2K and like you can go faster, but your head's saying like no, like this sucks, it hurts, like the governor's doing that. So kind of like putting the governor back in his office and saying like no, like I am scared, I am nervous, like in this sense, and talking it out really helps me. And then um like going there, like trying to lighten the mood, like blasting music in the car, or just having something planned afterwards, like going to go get like ice cream or lunch, or like a little treat to like look forward to, so it takes your mind off of that, is what I found is like super helpful.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think I one of the things, not even just related to like doctor's appointments and things, but when I was ever facing something nerve-wracking or hard in my life, my mom would always sit me down and be like, um, first and foremost, I don't know your religious status, but I would always read, I don't remember what it was. It was a verse in Matthew, and it was like, do not worry. And it was like this whole thing about worrying, because I've always just kind of been like an overly anxious person. So I would always read that. And then my mom would always be like, what is the worst thing that's going to happen? Like, are you going to die? Is this going to result in you dying? Like, is it that bad? And the answer for all of my situations so far, that was never going to happen. So that was one thing I always have told myself when like something like a surgery was going to happen or something crappy happened. I was like, is this going to be the end of me? And the answer has always been no. So that allows me to kind of sit back and breathe and realize like it's going to be okay.
Before 2K testing, we a couple years ago had a sports psychologist come in, and all of us used to be really like nervous around the rowing machine. We all had erg anxiety, and so we all sat down, and she's like kind of doing that same thing. Like we built a mantra that we would say to ourselves beforehand. We had our like walk-in song. Mine was Champion with Carrie Underwood. And she said before every piece, what you're gonna do is like take out your phone or a piece of paper, and she called it a shitty first draft, and you would write down every horrible thing that you think will happen, like everything, like my arms will go numb, I won't hit my numbers, like anything that could happen, just to get it out. And
Right.
then you won't look at it and just get in the zone, because once you get out you realize like you're not going to necessarily die. Like the worst things that are going to happen aren't really going to happen, and at the end of the day, like you just need to get it out. And then I think the whole thing, like you have to find a balance between like the sucking it up and like the like sulking in it. Like get it out, feel it, and then move on. Like feel it for a small bit, and then find something else to kind of like my grandma says like change your channel. Whenever we're in a bad mood, she always tells us to change our channel. So that's what I think of, like just get it out and then change your channel, move on, and like you got this type of thing.
Mhm. As you were talking about that, one of the things that kind of popped into my head was, you know, a lot of athletes, high level, any athlete, not even high level, when you're preparing for a big game, what do? You put your headphones on, you blast some music, you get hyped up and you get ready to go. For athletes, people like us who have gone through chronic injuries who, you know, affect our daily lives, that is our pregame. We are preparing to take on the pain, to take on the appointments, to take on all these things. And for us, like those appointments and whatever it may be, that is our game day. And while you're saying that, that just kind of like popped into my head because, to some people someone listening to this who hasn't experienced maybe the same thing, they're thinking, oh, it's a doctor's appointment, like suck it up. But like that doctor's appointment could be something that took weeks to get into. It could be something that you've been stressed about for weeks, and you have to prepare like it's your game day.
No, I definitely agree with that. And like a lot of my coping and stuff comes from stuff that I've learned from being an athlete. Like all of the stuff that I said, like blasting music, all of that is like exactly what we do, like right before we go, like on the bus or anything like that. Or like the whole like shitty first draft thing. Like I take that now and like I talk to people about it, but then afterwards, like something that kind of gets me through the doctor's appointment is like that I do have this outlet of having like my Instagram page with like my friends who like read it, or like my family and stuff, or like texting my physical therapist or texting Steph, my trainer, afterwards and like giving her the rundown. Like that's something that kind of like motivates me like going into it. So like all of those are skills that you use. Like something that I think a lot of us who have chronic illness or injury like in sports is that we don't view ourselves as athletes. I always like joke around and like, oh, like when I was an athlete, like today we were looking at pictures and they saw like a picture of me rowing. So yeah, that was back when I was an athlete. But like I'm still an athlete. Like I'm
Right.
still on a team. I'm still like a part of all of this. I'm just an athlete in a different way. So your habits and everything like that don't change just because you're not necessarily on the field.
Good point, because I definitely did that as well. Whenever I stopped like getting to practice and play, it was, yeah, when I used to play soccer. Even though I was still putting on, my cleats, and I was still, going and spending all of the hours it takes to go sit at practices and the additional time it takes to do therapy. So that's a very important note that hopefully someone can take something from that. Like just because you're hurt, you're not an athlete. I want Where are you now? So like what is your life of pain? What is your life of getting answers now? Like where is Hannah?
So I literally just got back to school on last Saturday, so a week ago. I went home and got the Botox shot. So right now my pain, everything's a little tight right now, I'm not gonna lie. It's my first week back at school and all of that, but I'm not in chronic pain. Before I got the shots, I was in pain 24/7. The only way I could describe it is like if you have a concussion in your entire body, plus having like I already have tight muscles everywhere. So those already happen. My muscles spasm all the time. But right now I'm like kind of like sitting comfortably where like, yes, it's all tight, but I'm not in like a huge amount of pain all the time. And I keep waiting for it to come back and it hasn't so far. So like knock on wood, like I'm feeling good there. I am working with my physical therapist on Monday to start re-entering into activity. Like I'm not re-entering into rowing or sports. We're gonna try walking on the treadmill for 15 minutes, and that type of stuff. And then on Tuesday, I'm gonna work with the strength and conditioning coaches because right now, since the beginning of the fall, I've been going to lift, but I haven't actually lifted with the team. I've been helping like coaching people on form or like hyping people up or just rolling out. So I want to work with them and talk about like walking on the treadmill there or like working on like body weight stuff or stretching and stuff like that that I can do in there with the rest of the team to help advance just like any progress, anything legs down that can maybe get me some muscle tone back or anything like that. And then I am waiting for a message from my doctor about the shots. He said that if it goes well, there's there's two different reactions I can have. So either it goes really well and I lose the muscle tone up here, which will help a lot and I won't need surgery, or The second one is that it helps with the pain, but the muscles don't atrophy enough. So I'm a good candidate for surgery, which at the end of the school year, because I kind of want to do it after I graduate, I'm going to go back home and probably get an angiogram to test nerves, pressures, all that type of stuff, and look into getting the first rib surgery on my left side.
Yeah. Wow. Well, hopefully that all, goes as planned. And I'm kind of curious, I think you would have a good outlook on this. How do you celebrate the small victories? Getting the Botox, how do you celebrate that? How are you going to celebrate walking on a treadmill? Something that seems so small to somebody who hasn't gone through it. But how do you kind of stop and let yourself celebrate a step in the right direction?
This is actually something I was talking about walking with my friend to practice today because he asked me how I was, and I like lifted my arm and he goes, "You can do that now. Like celebrate the small things." And I think as people with like chronic injuries like us, we kind of get in the mindset of like, "Oh, but I could do that before." Like at least for me, I always feel like before I started like kind of being in a better mindset, like, but I could walk before, I could write before, or I could sleep on a pillow before. And now, like, that I'm starting to get back into it and just kind of like change my mindset from last year, it's like, no, like I'm sleeping on a pillow. Like that's so cool. Like I honestly like I tell everyone, I text my trainers and my PT and my parents right away. Like every time I have something small like that, like I like to kind of just go and share it now because for me, last year I would have saw that as like, oh well, like no one cares. But like I care. Like that's a big thing for me. Like I sat through a full 6-hour class day on Tuesday and Thursday and I was like okay. Like that's a big thing. So you just have to like realize even if you could do it before, like you couldn't do that in between. You know what I mean? Like you couldn't do that a day ago. So like everything, if you weren't hurt and you were trying to celebrate like the small things, like you wouldn't say, "Oh, well, I did that before already." Like if it was something like, "Oh, I wrote a really good essay." Well, I wrote a really good essay last week, so I guess it doesn't matter. Like it's the same concept just with your body.
Right. When you said that, no one cares, that was definitely one of the things that was a barrier for me during my recovery is sometimes I just felt like a broken record and like I'm speaking to people and they truly aren't invested or they don't completely understand it, so they don't care. But I think that, you have to put that mindset behind you and you obviously you'll know who your real friends are and those people who you can really celebrate those small victories with, but the end of the day, like celebrate yourself. Like it doesn't matter what other people think. Like you're going through something really hard and you're, beating it. And that should be something that you want to and should celebrate.
And like the whole thing too with like the no one cares, I thought that, and at that point I wasn't really sharing what I was going through. And I think the more that you like celebrate and share what you're going through a little bit is when you start to realize, no, like people really do care. Like the person I was talking about all of this morning with, who was like, "Oh my god, like you lifted your arm." Like he's not one of my good friends. Like he's my teammate and I do consider him my friend, but like we don't hang out or anything like that. But like he was genuinely excited that I can lift my arm. Or like my coach who was on vacation had no clue that I went home. I told him everything that happened. I was like, "But I'm okay today." And he's like, "You're doing great. Like I'm happy that your arms aren't purple today." Like people really do care. And I think you just have to let them in and let people know like it's okay to care. It's okay to like celebrate me sleeping on a pillow. It's okay to celebrate me walking on a treadmill. Like anything small at that point, like you just have to have your mindset project outward and you'll see people really do care a lot more than you think.
Yeah, I always say like you can't expect people to help you and be there for you if you don't let them know that you're not okay. If you don't let them know that like this is what's going on in your life. You can't expect people to read your mind. Like you have to be your own best advocate. And the best way to advocate for yourself is to let people know how you're feeling, to put yourself first and just, share what you're going through. That's why I love your Instagram. Like obviously that was the basis around Stronger Scars, was just like I I'm a chatter and I have always thrived in my life when I got to share my experiences with people. So when I got hurt and it was a new realm for me and I didn't know how to get my voice out there still, I knew that me sharing my injury would help people understand what I was going through better. And I think that, obviously you're doing a great job of that. And the more you can do it, not only helps you, but will help those people around you.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, it definitely helps me share my story and all of that. And I've noticed a lot more of like my teammates or friends like coming to me and like asking me about injury stuff or like asking me about sports medicine stuff just because they know that I'm so open about everything that I'm doing and like all of that, that they feel comfortable like finding resources for themselves or like looking to me not as an inspiration. I don't really want to be like an inspiration to like all of that because I don't know. I feel like that word in chronic sports injuries kind of gets overused or has a bit of a stigma to it, but just as someone that like is supporting and like can be just like their cheerleader and help them through everything.
Wasn't the title of your guys' episode, "You don't always have to feel inspirational"?
Yeah.
Thought so. All right. Well, I have a loaded question, and you don't have to answer, but I think in light of what we kind of started with talking about Katie, I want I think it's important to ask people like, how are you legit feeling? Like, I don't want any bullshit. I want to know how you're actually feeling. I want this to be a safe place for you to open up and let us know how you're feeling. So, Hannah, how are you doing?
I think I'm actually doing really well this week. I'm not gonna lie, like beforehand, I wasn't doing as great as I could have been because I was stressed about the doctors and I had a professor that wasn't necessarily nice about me going home, but I'm almost caught up on all my work. I have like half a paper left to write. I had a good day at practice today. I got to talk with all the guys. It was test day, so those are always really fun. We have rowing formal tonight, so today is like
Ooh.
a really fun, like really good day. After this, I'm probably gonna take a nap to prepare for that.
Formals are the best.
I'm so excited. It's like just at our house and everything, but and it's literally we hang out together like every weekend, but like all of us dressed up like that never really happens. Or like I spend so much time with all these guys, but I don't have like pictures with them. So like it'll be nice because I like to scrapbook. Like my whole walls, besides this one back here, are covered in photos. So I just like this fun opportunity to go hang out and do stuff that like we don't normally do is fun.
Yeah, that's really exciting.
Mhm.
Emma has joined us now. So everyone say hi to Emma.
Hi.
um,
Hello.
and tell us how you're doing.
I'm doing okay. I'm doing well. Injury wise, like I still have it, and I'm looking into starting the process to get treatment for it because originally I decided I didn't want to go through that. It was just like going through that again, and even the thought of like having surgery or having more like invasive procedures after my legs is just like traumatic, and I don't want to have to go through that. But it's getting to the point where like simple things that shouldn't be hard are, and I don't want to have to go through like the rest of my life like scared I'm gonna do something. Like I'm gonna have to like do like simple tasks, you know? So that's like something that's there. But other than that, I've been doing well. I've definitely been trying to like look for more of the positives and move on from there.
Yeah, I think it's so unique to me that you guys both went through the same thing. Like,
It We have another set of triplets at our school that played basketball, and the two girls of the triplets also had compartment syndrome.
no way.
They got it in high school, but they came here and like because we never really heard about compartment syndrome before. And then like it started buzzing through like like the trainers can't share, but everyone in the trainers that goes there so regularly kind of knows what's going on. So it started buzzing through the trainers, and a girl on the field hockey team got it, and she was like, "Oh, do you know like these girls in the basketball team?" I'm like, "Yeah, like they're in our grade, they're triplets, whatever." And they're like, "They have compartment syndrome." So we kind of made our own like the end of last year going into the summer, like little support group of like people who had compartment syndrome. Just so happened that it was only three families and four of the people came from two of them.
Oh my goodness. My cousin, he's a guy, he had it too. There has to be genetics to it.
I think it definitely goes into like how your body is made because like we were on the same training plan as so many other people on our team. And like, yes, a lot of people did get compartment syndrome POS on the team. So like there was something wrong with the training plan. But like for both of us to get on the same training plan and then like two other girls in our grade who were doing the exact same thing to not get it, it's like something has to be either like genetic or just something about how like maybe just because we're shorter and build muscle quicker, like
Mhm.
something has to be about that.
Have you guys seen Dr. McGinley in Wyoming? Have you seen the stuff about him?
That's where the triplets went to. They flew all the way out to Wyoming to go meet with him. I'd much rather like stay in my comfort zone with the doctors that I'm seeing and just like what's traditionally done. I know like these injuries are not like traditional or anything like that, but just kind of jumping into it's like goes back to the whole like us being guinea pigs things. I feel like that's just so controversial or just such a new thought about it that I wouldn't want to be the first ones to kind of jump in on that,
Right. Right. Well, I don't have any other questions. I don't know if there's something that either one of you would like to discuss on the podcast.
I mean, that's really it for me. I mean, I still haven't gotten like definitive answers, but they're definitely trying to like, I got sent to pain management. And I think this is where one last thing. I used to look at pain management as kind of like where cases went to die. And I think that that's a big mindset within like injury and illness, because when I was younger, I was really, really sick my freshman year of high school and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And they sent me to pain management. Like that was like their last resort. And I think going to the pain management doctor that I went to, like he talked with my other doctors about everything. He was up to date and he was like, no, like I think you do have TOS, and not that it really matters because I'm here to treat your symptoms, not diagnose you. But like he made sure that all of my doctors were in the loop with me, and like he truly cared about me as a person and all of that. And finding like if you do get sent to pain management, find one that you truly connect with and that connects with like your care team, because now like yes, I went to pain management, but my orthopedist and my vascular surgeon all know what happened. And when I go to them, it's not gonna be like, oh, we'll just go back to pain management. Like they're all working together. So just kind of destigmatizing any doctors or departments that you have to go to in order to feel better, because feeling better isn't the same as like recovery or getting better. That's another thing too. So like don't pinhole yourself and like, oh well, I'm going to pain management, so that's it.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you for coming on. It was really good to just kind of hear your perspective on, not getting answers, because that's something, I went through, I think a lot of people go through, and it's inevitable in some injuries. So thank you for being vulnerable and just kind of opening up and sharing that with us.
Thank you for having me.